Manx Radio's Update with Christian Jones.
Fastamai, good evening. This is Manx Radio's Update, a 30-minute current affairs and news programme giving you a quick look at all the happenings on the Isle of Man: politics, news, sport, travel and the likes. On the way, an accident investigation report has found 3 dock workers from an Isle of Man registered bulk carrier died after one entered the wrong cargo hold and his 2 colleagues attempted to rescue him. Ramsey Commissioners says the Department of Infrastructure has been systematically delaying funding for social housing projects, and a special drone display is set to light up Douglas later tonight. As always, do get in touch if you want to comment on anything you hear. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First of all, though, it's 1 minute past 5. Let's cross over to Chanel Suku, who has the latest news headlines. Fastamai, Chanel.
Fastamai. A former teacher from Ballacameen High School has been jailed for 19 months after producing and possessing indecent photographs of children. Liam Paul Taylor, who was told that he'd abused his position of trust during sentencing at Douglas Courthouse today. A restaurateur says he's had to come up with an out-of-the-box and creative way to keep his business running during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Looking at what was going on in Europe, people were sitting outside. We set up perimeters, and whilst doing the takeaways, we managed to get people in to enjoy the outdoor space whilst the weather was getting nicer, and we did very, very well that summer.
And a special drone display is being held in Douglas tonight to mark a year since the island's capital became a city. Tonight's 15-minute display, choreographed to music, will take place in the skies over Loch Promenade. In international news, Nicola Sturgeon says there wasn't a scrap of evidence against her after being cleared in a police inquiry into SNP finances. Senior military officers from countries across Europe are meeting near London to discuss plans for a peacekeeping force. Sir Keir Starmer says a so-called coalition of the willing are moving to an operational phase. And Kirsty Coventry's become the first woman ever elected president of the International Olympic Committee. The Zimbabwean is a 2-time gold medal winning swimmer. Those are your headlines. News at 6.
Thanks, Chanel. Now let's take a quick look at the weather this evening, brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Continuing fine and dry this evening with east or southeast winds gradually increasing fresh in places. Minimum temperature tonight around 7 degrees Celsius, which is milder than recent nights.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshaw Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode Estate, view philshawvehicles.im or call 49 51 49.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Beldorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
SMS Trading. New and second-hand furniture from flat pack to fully built. See our range at 3 St Paul Square, Ramsey. All island delivery and man in a van service available. Call SMS Trading on 315151 or find SMS Trading on Facebook.
The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
4 minutes past 5, and now let's stick with the weather. It's the 20th of March, which means today is the last day of winter. And according to figures released by Ronaldsway Met Office, the Isle of Man experienced 14% less sunshine over the winter period than we normally see on average. Now, forecaster Colin Gartshaw joins us now. Hi, Colin. Thanks for joining us. And, well, 14% less sunshine. What factors could have likely contributed to that?
Hi, Christian. Yeah, well, it was also a bit drier than average over the winter too, so I think we had some periods of high pressure that persisted for quite some time, so that really meant that those high pressure led to some dry spells as well. So high pressure in winter tends to mean cloudy conditions, and high pressure in summer is more sunny, so that kind of led to the less than average amount of sunshine really overall.
And as you're talking about the temperature there, the average temperature was slightly above average too, and December was the fourth warmest on record. Are we seeing a continued trend of warmer winters?
Yeah, I mean, generally the whole year is warmer than it's been over the last 100 years, so there's been a general upward trend in temperature throughout that period. So winters are not quite the same as they were in the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s. We don't see much in the way of snow on low ground anymore. The figures are about 1 to 1.5 degrees above the sort of values we had 30, 40 years ago. So that means we're going to have a lot less snow in the winter time. So yeah, that trend's going to continue, I think, into probably the rest of the century, I would imagine.
And the strongest gust of the season was recorded at 81 miles per hour during Storm Eowyn in January. How did that storm compare with other significant storms that we've had in recent years?
Well, that comes out at about the 13th strongest gust of wind since about 1966. So it was one of the windiest periods we've seen. Not the absolute strongest by quite a way, but it certainly was up there. We had 2 spells of particularly bad winds, that earlier storm in December and the one in January. So it was pretty windy, but not anywhere near the strongest ever.
Fabulous. Well, fingers crossed the lack of sunshine we've had this winter will be made up for as we go into spring and summer. Colin Gottschalk from the Ronaldsway Met Office there, thank you. 6 minutes past 5 now, and a former teacher from Ballacomene High School has been jailed today for producing and possessing indecent photographs of children. News editor Tessa Hawley was at Douglas Courthouse for the sentencing. Tessa, what can you tell us?
So this afternoon, teacher Liam Paul Taylor was sentenced to 19 months in custody at the Isle of Man prison. The 26-year-old had previously pleaded guilty to 6 offences, 4 of producing indecent images and 2 of possessing them. The court heard that Taylor had filmed 2 female students at the school and then used the footage to create still images, which he then doctored using AI technology.
And can you just tell us a little bit more about that? Those images were described in court as pseudo. What does that actually mean?
So effectively, what Taylor had done was capture the footage of the students in the library and the classroom covertly whilst he was at work. He then uploaded them to his computer and used artificial intelligence to manipulate the images he'd created so that they became indecent. The prosecutor told the court they look like they are real photographs. Now, the offences were all committed on the 27th of May last year. Taylor was arrested on an unrelated matter on the 7th of June, and his devices were seized, which is when police found the indecent material and began investigating. Now, importantly, the court was told no contact offences had been committed.
And what did Taylor's advocate say in mitigation for his client?
Well, he said some of the images had become almost unrecognisable from how they'd started off, but he accepted that the critical issue was that he was, of course, in a position of trust as their teacher. He said Taylor was suffering from poor mental health at the time and has obviously now lost his career as a result of his offending, adding these offences are going to follow him for many years into the future.
And what did the Deemster say?
So sentencing Deemster Graham Cook told Taylor he'd abused his position of trust, adding, "I cannot imagine what the girls and their parents thought when the police came knocking on their door to tell them what had happened." He said there was no good reason to suspend the 19-month sentence, adding, "If I were to suspend that sentence, it might send out the wrong message." Deemster Cook also imposed a sexual harm prevention order and told Taylor, who now resides in Darwin in the United Kingdom, that he would also be excluded from the Isle of Man for 5 years on his release from custody.
Tessa, thank you for that. And of course, you'll be able to find more on that story at manxradio.com. Now, 9 minutes past 5, Ramsey Commissioners says the Department of Infrastructure has been systematically delaying funding for social housing projects in the town. At its meeting last night, the local authority debated the lack of support from the DOI, including one site which could now cost an additional £2 million because of the stalling. Local democracy reporter Emma Draper has been speaking with Commissioner Joan McGuinness.
It's not so much a point of contention. As I said in the meeting tonight, I welcome Mr Hooper being proactive in this manner, but we've been waiting quite a long time from the Objective Housing Needs Report and the various other sort of central government housing strategies in the Island Plan, and it seems counterintuitive to then write out to all local authorities requesting that we provide our housing strategies, when surely you would logically want the DOI or central government to be advising what their principle-led housing strategy is and how the local authorities can work towards that end goal.
You mentioned in the meeting about the delays to social housing projects in Ramsey. How bad has that been that it's got to the point where you're now trying to raise it in a public forum?
It's incredibly frustrating. The Close Warra project has been ongoing for years, and we've been waiting for the DOI for months, if not years, to release funding to move forward with that. It's clearly identified, and as a business project, it's a need, and there's no real reason other than the DOI's own internal mechanisms as to why that's not been moved forward.
So what would you like to see happen next?
I'd like to see them carry through the Island Plan and actually invest in infrastructure of housing on the island. It's massively important. It's not a cost, it is an investment in the people of the Isle of Man and the future of this country.
Commissioner Juan McGuinness speaking there. And since then, a political member for the Department of Infrastructure says a house building strategy is missing from the government's housing priorities. Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper believes the solution to increasing public sector housing is to work with the local authorities for a solution.
My view is the model that we currently have in terms of the way deficiency funds are applied actually slows down the whole process. What I think is needed and what I think the department is looking to do is to completely review the way we set rents and we actually fund local authority houses. That has to be done by collaborating with local authorities. And that, I think, will help resolve some of those structural issues around, well, actually, who is it that's really responsible for funding these things, and how do we get the decision making done at a lower level and quicker, rather than everything needing to go all the way through the entire chain. In terms of the specific Ramsey project, I'm not aware that we've actually received a borrowing petition from Ramsey Commissioners for either of those projects as yet. I know that there has been conversations around business cases that have been submitted, but those conversations have been going on for some time. But ultimately, like I said, the reason for kick-starting this process is because there has been a lack of focus on building in recent years. There's been quite a bit of refurbishment, a bit of replacement, but in terms of expanding the public sector stock, that hasn't really been happening. And that, to my mind, is a big problem, and we do need to find a way of jump-starting that. You know, there was some comment in the Ramsey Commissioners meeting about how long it took to get the OAN out, the Objective Assessment of Housing Need. And again, they're right, it took quite a while to get that out. But alongside that, there didn't appear to be work going on to say, well, how are we going to turn that into reality? You know, we knew it was going to tell us we needed homes, but actually, I don't think there was much of a recognition on the part of government more broadly that, well, that means you're going to have to figure out how to do that. So you will start seeing some stuff come out from the department around things that we're trying to do ourselves to get some development out there, to get some housing built, because I don't think there is one solution to this problem. I don't think the solution is local authorities doing a load of building and nobody else. I don't think the solution is the department doing a load of building and nobody else. The solution is going to be, well, the OAN tells us we need 1,000 houses. Some of those will be department, some of them will be local authority, some of them will be private sector, some of them may be Manx Development Corporation. Who knows, ultimately? But I think if we try to put all our eggs in one basket and say, well, all of this problem is now your problem, either local authorities or department, it's not going to work. We have to be able to work together on this.
Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper there. 13 minutes past 5 now.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
An accident investigation report has concluded that 3 dock workers from an Isle of Man registered bulk carrier died after one mistakenly descended into the wrong cargo hold and his 2 colleagues attempted to rescue him. The incident took place aboard the Burge Mawson in June 2022 at Bunyu Island, Anchorage, Indonesia. As Siobhan Fletcher reports.
49-year-old Freddie Simon, 28-year-old Mohammed Sajuddin and 38-year-old Martin Seko were Indonesian nationals who were regularly assigned to work on vessels loading at Bunyu Island. They were recovered from a cargo hold access space at around 1:45 p.m. on the 27th of June 2022. And despite prompt medical attention by ship and port staff, the 3 men died. Burge Mawson was loading a bulk cargo of coal from barges using a floating crane. The coal in cargo hold number 7 was being levelled by a bulldozer when loading was paused and all hatches were closed due to heavy rain. Once the rain had stopped, a dock worker made several attempts to gain access to the bulldozer. Unsupervised, Mr. Simon mistakenly descended into cargo hold number 8's access space where he then collapsed. As Burge Mawson's crew were collecting rescue equipment, the 2 other men also collapsed into cargo hold number 8's access space as they attempted to rescue their stricken colleague. Post-mortem examinations on the men were not conducted and the cause of death was not confirmed. However, the atmospheric readings of the cargo hold number 8 forward access space taken after the casualties were found showed a deficiency of oxygen and a high level of hydrogen sulfide. The report concludes that it is highly likely that the noxious air breathed by the 3 dock workers caused them to be incapacitated upon entry into the cargo access space, and the resulting shutdown of their brain and/or lungs led to their deaths. As a result of the investigation, Burge Mawson's management company has reviewed its procedures for entry into cargo hold spaces, undertaken to fit physical barriers to prevent unauthorised cargo hold access on all of its bulk carriers, and has revised its ship shore safety checklist. As always, you can find more on this story at manxradio.com.
Siobhan Fletcher reporting there. Let's turn our attention to travel now.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, a couple of things to be aware of on the roads. Crosby temporary lights, which were due to be in place on the main roads, the crossroads near Co-op, have actually been postponed until tomorrow. They'll be in place from 9 until 4. Meanwhile, the A3 TT course is closed between Billig Bridge and the Cronky Body for drainage work. Over in Santon, temporary lights on the new Castletown Road at the Ferry Bridge. That's until 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. Over in Douglas, temporary lights on Summerhill near the bottom of the hill, 24 hours a day for gas work. Also temporary lights on Douglas Prom between the bottom of Summerhill and Port Jack, also for 24 hours a day for street light replacement. And of course, a stretch of Loch Promenades will also be closed this evening for the drone show. That closure is in place between 7:30 and 8, and that's between the Sea Terminal and Regent Street. That's all I've got here, but if you do spot something while you're out and about, do let me know if it's safe to do so. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. Let's have a quick look at the steam packet. Nothing out of the ordinary there that I'm seeing. Similarly at the airport, no issues on the arrivals or departures board.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with Quayside.
Now, as we've heard this week, how government is considering charging people to submit freedom of information requests as the number of complex requests taking more than 18 hours to process is growing. A consultation has been opened asking whether charges should be introduced or other measures such as cost limits, a limit to the amount of requests one person can submit in a single year too. Now, FOI requests actually allow individuals to ask public authorities for access to information held by them, and currently you can submit one free of charge. Now, I sat down with the Cabinet Office Minister David Ashford to ask why government is bringing this matter forward.
I think it's important we go out and garner people's views. Freedom of information has been in place in the current format since 2018. So I think it's a good position to pause, take a look at what we actually have in place and see if any changes need to be brought forward.
The purpose of freedom of information requests is effectively to boost accountability and transparency from government. So doesn't adding that extra layer of bureaucracy actually defeat the object of that?
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean there will be an added layer of bureaucracy. I mean, I assume you're making reference to the charging structure potentially, or additional rules around how many freedom of information requests people can make. One of the things we actually know is that a very small number of people are actually making a disproportionate amount of freedom of information requests out of the total, and that is actually having a direct effect on government. So, for instance, if you look at the number of hours for freedom of information requests, it's gone up exponentially, the amount of workload. So in 2018, there was only 10 requests that took more than 18 hours to actually produce the result. Now in 2024, there's 49. And in terms of people submitting FOI requests, there was actually 10 requesters with more than 10 requests in the last period.
Do you think it would help if government was more transparent to begin with and that information was more accessible? I know in the past you've even said that the government website is awful to navigate.
Yeah, and it's one of the things certainly in Cabinet Office we are looking to do alongside anything else, regardless of what this consultation comes out with. I've always been very clear we need to have more access to data. There needs to be more online accessible data for people, open source data, and that is one of the things we're pushing in the Cabinet Office and with the Government Technology Service to see what we can do. Isle of Man website is a start. We need also to be using AI more effectively to ensure that people can find things. But an awful lot of the FOIs that do come in are things that are already readily available and people get directed to where they can actually find it already.
Cabinet Office Minister David Ashford speaking there.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Now, hospitality businesses on the Isle of Man say they're still recovering from the repercussions of having to shut down or adapt their ways of working due to COVID-19. This week, we're marking the 5-year anniversary of the pandemic and its impact reaching the island shores. Certainly during that time, the hospitality sector was one of the most affected by lockdowns and the various other restrictions in spite of government support schemes. Andy Saunders is a representative of the Licensed Victuallers Association. He's also the owner of Quidzin. He's been speaking to Chanel Suku about what he recalls as a terrifying period.
Most businesses accumulated some debt because rent still had to be paid, taxes and so on were still being paid. And then obviously we've had the energy crisis, also the cost of living crisis has affected it. And also because of the work from home changes to life that people just aren't about in towns and villages as much as they used to be.
From COVID, we've seen a number of businesses closing, and recently we're still seeing businesses closing. Is that because of that hard hit that they had to take back then?
COVID was definitely the start of many issues for businesses that have been relatively successful or very successful up until those times. We've lost some considerable businesses on the island, but not just through the point of COVID, through the point of the other issues that have been arising since then.
Does it mean that you kind of have to get a bit more creative nowadays to attract that footfall or to keep the business going?
People just don't have the habit of going to their local pub or going out for a meal once a week and things like that they used to do. You have to create reasons to bring footfall out into the premises, and you've seen a lot of success of new enterprising ideas coming out from our partners in our hospitality and coming up with new ideas to get people out and about and to try and create new events and so on that will attract people. And I think some people are still concerned about being in public spaces where there's large numbers gather.
What has the hospitality industry as a whole learned or taken from this whole pandemic?
They'll be a lot more wary in the future. Fingers crossed it'll never happen again, but it's a difficult one. It's definitely made people more aware of difficulties can come around the corner at no time at all, and people will have to prepare and have more backup for those kind of issues arising. Certainly, all of the people I know ate very deeply into reserves over COVID when we couldn't operate at all.
22 minutes past 5 there. And a special drone display will light up Douglas tonight to mark a year since it became a city. Queen Camilla conferred city status a year ago today, following the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee grant in 2022. The 15-minute display will be set to music, and Andy Hubble from the organising company has been explaining the inspiration behind it.
I was out in Europe, in Malta, and we saw this amazing drone system and just thought, that is absolutely stunning. The quality of the images that it was producing, the brightness of the drones, the colours, the dynamics of the drones just blew us away. We'd seen them before, but we weren't very impressed in previous years. Like during COVID, there was a big drone show that we went to, and we didn't think the technology was quite there. But suddenly this really grabbed us. Looked into it. We bought some drones. We went on training, and you know, over the last few years, we've really honed our skills. With, I've worked all over the world with drones: Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Malta, Germany, and New Year's Eve. You'll never guess where I was working. This New Year's Eve just gone, I was on Necker Island in the British Virgin Islands, which is Richard Branson's private island, where we did a drone show there with pyro drones. So that's where you do the normal light show that can produce images in the sky, and they have fireworks attached to them, only little ones, but really quite special. Okay. So I wanted to bring this to the islands. So we've bought a free drone show. It's not a massive one, you know. I've worked on ones with 1,200, sort of 10 times the size, but it's absolutely good enough to do what we want to do, which is really, you know, create a bit of buzz and bring some of the real amazing, clever little images into the sky.
Andy Hubble from the Star Symphony Drone Show speaking ahead of the display, which gets underway from 7:30. Now, let's turn our attention to sport. Sports editor Rob Pritchard joins us now. Faster my Rob.
Faster my Christian. First off tonight, Isle of Man tennis star Billy Harris has been knocked out in the first round of the men's singles at this year's Miami Open. The former Castleton and Albany pair was beaten in 3 sets by the USA's Elliot Spitzeri, 6-7, 6-3, 2-6 in the early hours of this morning at the Hard Rock Stadium complex. Well, previously 30-year-old Harris had registered 2 victories beforehand in the qualifying rounds against Sweden's Mikael Ymer and also Hugo Gaston of France. Elsewhere this month, Harris was also in action on the ATP Tour in the USA at Indian Wells on the 4th of March, where he suffered a straight sets defeat in the opening round. Harris, currently 107th in the ATP World Rankings, had started the month positively by reaching the semi-finals at Bengaluru in India on the ATP Challenger Tour. Elsewhere in motorsport, Manx TT competitor Conor Cummins could make his competitive debut for Burroughs Engineering RK Racing early next month. The Temple Motorcycle Club has announced the Ramsey man is scheduled to be part of the opening round of this year's Ulster Superbike Championship. He'll be joined there by teammate and British Talent Cup rider Jack Burrows, with the opening round of the series at the Bishop's Court Racing Circuit penned in for Saturday the 5th of April. Well, for 2025, Cummins, who signed for his new team in October last year, is expected to again contest the Isle of Man TT in the 1000cc and Supersport classes, as well as the Northwest 200. At last year's event on the Snaefell Mountain course, Cummins withdrew midway through the event, bringing to an end an 8-year spell with the Malenko by Paget's Motorcycles team. And finally, Isle of Man snooker player Darrell Hill is about to begin his campaign at the 2025 US Snooker Masters in California. The Manx competitor has received an invite for the USA event taking place from today until Sunday in Sacramento. Featuring 48 players in total, there'll be an even split of Pan-American and international competitors. Hill's group opponents are both from the USA in the form of Tommy Collins and Bob Hemnani. Among the other individuals to take part are ex-Irish pro player David Morris, 2023 IBSF World Championship winner Ali Aboullaidli. Both of Hill's group games are taking place this evening. The first of those will see him face Collins at around 5:30 p.m. UK time.
Forgot to put my mic on there. I was so excited. Thanks for that, Rob. And of course, if you're out and about tonight, do remember that Loch Promenade will be closing between that stretch between the Sea Terminal and Regent Street. That's for the drone show. That is free to attend if you want to go. That's all from Update this evening, though. Up next is Island Life, and then from 6 is Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley. Morris Powell will be along after that from 9 o'clock, and then of course Rhiannon Evans with After Hours from 10. Of course, you can find all of the Manx Radio stories at our website manxradio.com, and if there's anything which you heard today which you think you may want to listen to in more detail, we do have the Manx Radio newscast section. I'll be back with you from tomorrow, but until then, take care, bye bye for now.